My name is Yanis Fakinyansha, and I'm happy to welcome you all to Tactics and Practice number 13 from Commons to NFTs. Tactics and Practice is a series of conferences and seminars that Aksioma Institute for Contemporary Art Ljubljana has been organizing since 2010, often in collaboration with Kino Šiška. This new edition is realized in the framework of CON's platform for contemporary investigative art, a project co-financed by the Republic of Slovenia and the European Regional Development Fund of the European Union. The conference From Commons to NFTs brings together artists, hackers, and researchers to critically examine the shift in digital culture from open sharing to crypto-based form of ownership. Is this the ultimate triumph of financialization, or are there openings for different properties regimes and though new forms of art and culture? We started warming up the engines a few weeks ago with a conversation on Twitter Space about NFTs in digital art after the hype, organized by our outreach partners, Fair Data Society, We Are Millions. Together with conceptual artist Jonas Lund, researcher and co-director of Further Field Root Catalog, and digital culture professor Felix Stalder, we discuss what practical strategies are pursued by digital artists active in the field, where true cultural innovation stems from, what lessons we can learn from NFT developments over the past 2 years, and finally, what the next steps are in this field. This morning, the conference opened with 2 activities. The first one was the board game entitled Game Changers, the Game by Rock Kranz, that engaged players in generative discussions about post-capitalist strategies and the mutuality conflicting discourses that underline the new economy buzzwords of the day, such as sharing, smart, circular, collaborative, regenerative, and many others. The second activity was the workshop Zen Code, organized by Ludmila and led by Purya Nafizi of Dyne.org, on how to write smart contracts using natural language. The goal of the workshop is to improve people's awareness on how their data is processed by algorithms and make it easier for developers to create applications that follow the principle of privacy by design. The afternoon session begins now with the panel Crypto and the Commons, followed by a second panel at 5 p.m. entitled Ownership and Desire. And we'll conclude with a third panel at 7 p.m. entitled After the Bubble, NFT as a Long-Term of Artistic Medium. At this point, I would like to invite on the stage Felix Stalder, who together with Shu Lea Cheang and Rock Kranz helped me to put together this conference. Felix, please come and tell us a little bit more about the background and the series of essays that inspired this event. Felix Stalder is a professor of digital culture and network theory at Zurich University of the Arts. It's a cultural producer and moderator of the Net Time mailing list since 1998. Felix, I leave the stage.
Thank you, Janis. This event is most unlikely and therefore also most precious, coming out of a chain of good vibes and lucky energies, but also commitment, friendship, and hard work. It started out pretty much exactly 1 year ago at the reception of a conference in Paris when Shu Lea Cheang, from whom you will hear in a minute, and Ewan Chardonnay, who unfortunately cannot be here today, and myself met. Because food and drinks were free, we hung around for a long time. We began to ask ourselves what had happened to the world we were all working in, digital culture in the broadest sense, which seemingly turned from an interest in shared culture, free resources, and collaboration beyond the market and the state towards new forms of hypercommodification, creating what we saw as an obvious contradiction itself, a unique digital copy, and everything that comes with the ability to trade rare commodities in an unregulated global market. We didn't really know whether this constitutes a break or a continuity, so we decided to ask this question to people we thought would know that, and ask them to give us their understanding of the relationship between these two ideas, the commons and NFTs, and the social, cultural, and artistic dynamics that animated them. The people we asked are Yukiko Shikata, Michel Kasperzak, Jaromil, Cornelia Solfrank, Jaya Clara Brecke, and Lee Tzu-Tung. For most of them you will hear today, and my first thanks are to them for participating in this project and, quite amazingly, given the madness we are forced to live through, deliver great texts on time. We published one every last day of the month for between January and July this year. Ewan Chardonnay opened the pages of Makery magazine for the initial publication, and this was quite important to us, provided a small author's fee to everyone. I'd like to thank him and the entire team at Makery.info for making this possible. But this was not the end of the story, but rather this was where Aksioma, Janes, Marcella, Rock, and Sonja came in when they agreed to publish a book from these 7 essays. Initially we thought, how hard can it be to turn 7 existing essays into an edited volume? Seems like a simple copy and paste job, but of course it turned out to be much more work than expected, because we decided to go over all texts and edit them thoroughly. So now these are much cleaner, book-worthy versions of themselves. I am really happy that the book is out here now. Here it is, and part of this event is to share our joy about its existence. But it doesn't end here either. We wouldn't have invited you to read to you from a book that you can read yourself. Rather, we want to use the question underlying this book to think further. After all, this is a fast-moving area, and 1 year feels like a very long time. Indeed, it moved so fast that we're not really sure whether NFTs still are a thing. But what they stand for, the radical experimentation with new forms of culture, whether it is commodified culture or non-commodified culture, is still very much a thing that we care about. And in this spirit, I also welcome you for the next few hours of discussion and collective and connective thinking and reflection. And with that, I hand over to Rob Kranz to get the thing actually started. Thank you.
At a time when mainstream crypto culture is dominated by right-wing libertarianism, this first panel seeks to explore how alternative crypto projects apply the concepts of radical, algorithmic, and indigenous sovereignty in using the blockchain and NFTs with the aim to advance commoning practices. Aude Launay will examine the relationship between self-sovereignty and the commons. Lee Tzu-Tung will focus on how artists collectively use NFTs to pirate the current property regime and decolonize ownership structures. And Denis Jaromil Roio will explore how Web3 can be developed as a space for digital commons against new aggressive forms of privatization, exploitation, and centralized control. Now to introduce our first speakers. Aude Launay is a philosopher whose current research focuses on distributed decision-making through algorithmic processes and blockchain-based democratic systems. Prior to this, she extensively wrote about and curated exhibitions of art that interferes with the power mechanisms underpinning governance structures. Her recent writing has appeared in books such as between the material and the possible, infrastructural re-examination and speculation in art, and the great offshore. She's currently writing a political philosophy book on DAOs and producing a Web3 education program. Our next speaker is Lee Tzu-Tung, a political artist whose art projects combine anthropological field research with political activism and invite participants to test and decolonize contemporary forms of art, technology, and authority. They issued the cryptocurrency Positive Coin to create a monetary-based community that extends HIV identities, and as part of For Economy, they gathered an alternative assembly with artist Denis to discuss the ownership of the South China Sea. They've also organized several of Taiwan's indigenous and gender movements and founded the Artist-Technologist Collaborative, NPO. Next up, we will also be joined by Jaromil, who is co-founder and CTO of Dyn, a social impact-oriented software house known for flagship EU projects on blockchain technologies and data ownership, material flows and the regenerative economy, and for software such as Zenroom, an accessible crypto-smart contract executor. Jaromil published his PhD on algorithmic sovereignty and received the Willem Flusser Award at Transmediale, while leading for 6 years the R&D department of the Netherlands Media Art Institute. And moderating this panel is Shu Lea Cheang, an artist and filmmaker working with various art mediums and film formats, including installations, performances, net art, feature-length films, and others. She's also a known net art pioneer whose project Brandon was the first web artwork commissioned and collected by the Guggenheim Museum. Her first film scenarios and artworks feature sci-fi narratives, by which she has crafted her own science fiction genre of new queer cinema, which she has termed eco-cybernoia, sci-fi cyberpunk, and sci-fi cypherpunk. And with that, welcome Shu Lea to the floor.
Thank you, everybody, and to be here. Just want to make sure. Switch the screen. Okay. How do we cycle, recycle, and uncycle a concept, an idea, a plan, a narrative, a revolution, a manifesto? We remind ourselves that a concept, an idea, a plan, a narrative, a revolution, a manifesto can only build over previous ones. How do we network? The medium is the massage. How do we build communities? How do we, as collective viral bodies, venture into a brand new ecosystem? Repair and regeneration. We go mushroom hunting in the forest, in the rooms. Crypto and commons. Do these two words, two practices, two visions, echo each other? Is there a meeting point? Do we depart the commons to arrive at crypto? Or do we crypto back to the commons? We congregate at the launch of the Crypto Commons movement, peer production on the Crypto Commons as authored by Richard Red and been promoted as a CC license. I want to bring up the project Kingdom of Piracy, which triggered this series of tests that we started from last year, as Felix described. So the test from commons to NFTs. So Kingdom of Piracy, KOP, is an online open workspace to explore the free sharing of digital content, often condemned as piracy. As the next ultimate art form, the project Kingdom of Piracy was jointly curated by Shu Lea Cheang, Armin Madosh, and Yukiko Shikata, and was first launched in 2002 at Ars Electronica. I'm actually going to bring back the curatorial statement from this work, and the website somehow still there with, as you can see, different plugins that was built at the time. Some of the artists are also here, actually joined the Kingdom of Piracy back in 2002. Let me just read, actually, also we can do it by, I also have taped down. Oh, sorry. No problem. So, okay. So this is I'm going to introduce the three speakers that with us today by sort of reading some of their text quote and echoing from the Kingdom of Piracy. So Kingdom of Piracy. With the increasing shift towards a material, weightless economy, the concept of intellectual property rights has become a central issue. The rich enforcement of intellectual property rights worldwide through patents, copyright, anti-piracy laws is resisted by a loose but growing alliance of scientists, researchers, free software, and open source developers, artists, lawyers, and teachers. The purpose of Kingdom Piracy KOP is to consider the law and order provisions surrounding intellectual property in the context of geographical and cultural borders, and to examine the changes and challenge presented by information technology. From Jaromil, the real crypto movement, he mentioned, the Crypto Commons movement was born underground and was able to share its ethical foundation with a vast mass of people around the world. The Crypto Commons movement, I believe that the Crypto Commons movement has a clear mission to shape and defend the techno-political evolution of computing platforms outside the logics of ownership. The new condition of anonymous collective ownership of decentralized information architecture force us to understand a new ethical meaning of computational democracy. Next statement, again, Kingdom of Piracy curatorial statement written in 2002 with the, actually, let me see. Okay. Oh, I forgot to. Okay. So, the kingdom of piracy is everywhere, on the fringe and in the mainstream high-tech economies, from Asia to Eastern Europe to the data heavens of Sealand and hackers' garages in Silicon Valley. The digital commons is basing in millions of MP3s and an endless supply of worlds. Codes for appropriation, cut and paste, replication, sampling, and remixing have long been established as artistic practice. KOP challenges artists, writers, and practitioners to use these techniques to question, contribute to, analyze, and otherwise address this growing kingdom. It also asks them to become intimately involved in the process of the kingdom itself, a place in which all productions are part of an innately collaborative, derivative, and intimately interconnected environment of intellectual property. And from Lee Tzu-Tung, from her text from commons to NFT, selling in the piracy of art, often the colonizers established legal systems, appointed and gave information on what land and what activities the indigenous people may be allowed to have, despite the fact that indigenous people had long lived on their territories prior to the nation. the artistic and careful use of NFTs, originally conceived as a mechanism for privatization, can also help to reprofile and reconceptualize lost commons. If blockchain facilitates a horizontal transformation of the current colonial structure, NFT platforms are placed to reformulate the commons stolen from the pirated high seas. Again, from Kingdom of Piracy. Kingdom of Piracy invites allied crews or hackers, in the sense of Eric Ramon, a person who enjoys exploring the details of programmable system and how to stretch their capacities, and artists to plug into the supply lines of digital abundance. The KOP site intends to be an active public sphere for global file sharing, de-scrambling, and digital culture jamming. Commission works are encouraged to engage in artistic acts of privacy for the cause of intellectual discourse and poetic intervention, but not as any endorsement of piracy per se. And then from Aude Launay, from her published article, from the automation of relations to the amplification of communities, the rise of DAOs. What is to be done when a system is so overwhelming? The only massive coordination to start abiding by its rules can result in its abolition. But then establishing this very coordination is somewhat impossible. Bypassing the national rules and borders can be a way to not only raise general awareness around the tragedy of the commons, but also to offer solutions both on the global and local levels. In this perspective, one network cannot go without the other, and the society may not find the answer to both the free rider problem and the always lurking abuses of power without those global and local networks overlapping. To get there, DAO-to-DAO relations will be essential to think through, and the Matryoshka DAO's model may be one of those possible relations. So this is as the first panel, the crypto and commons. We already introduced a lot of these concepts. We are not saying one over the other, and I think it just meant for the first panel to already open up the conversation. As Felix said, that after a year, we see the rise of the NFTs. We are not sure where it is at yet, and I believe after this panel, we also have another 2 panels along the day, and it should be really exciting to watch. So with this, I'd like to introduce Aude Launay to take the microphone. Thanks.
So, hi everyone, and thank you, Shu Lea, for the introduction. Thank you, Denis and Marcela, for the invitation. So I'm going to talk about from commons to NFTs and back. NFTs for the commons, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the key to avoiding the curse of a comfortable life was to create artificial scarcity for the rural poor. Access to common land touched a particularly sensitive nerve among more affluent property owners. Marx cited a Dr. Hunter who fretted that a few acres to the cottage would make the laborers too independent. Such fears were commonplace during the period of classical political economy. In 1794, a report to the Board of Agriculture on shrub fire noted that the use of the commons now open operates upon the mind as a sort of independence. Others remarked that enclosure would ensure a subordination of the lower ranks of society, which in the present times is so much wanted. So this was a quote from The Invention of Capitalism by Michael Perelman. So a couple centuries later, the language of blockchain mechanism design states that NFT technically create artificial scarcity in order to enhance independence. Rooted in the cypherpunk ethos, in a nutshell, the use of cryptography as a liberating tool by way of free and open source software, and crossed with an emphasis put on the idea of the sovereign individual, NFTs have been conceived of as encoding property rights in the digital marble of the blockchain. So property rights granted with mathematics, not with laws, as John Gilmore would say. And yet, funding the commons as well as public goods are important and recurrent endeavors in crypto, and especially in the Ethereum community. So many initiatives such as Moloch DAO, Giveth, Gitcoin, Bloom Network, powered by powerful memes, so that of Moloch, public goods are good, and reflected in events such as the Crypto Commons Gathering or Funding the Commons Conference, incarnate this vision. Even NFT marketplaces now play the game, since doing good offers easy ways to automatically share sales revenue with social impact organizations. So on the one hand, the amplification of private property, on the other, a deep concern for the res publica. And then a question: are these two stances mutually exclusive? Or is this the moment to reconsider both what we mean by property and by public goods and commons? As Scott Moore, co-founder of Gitcoin, explains, and I quote, "Things we consider public goods are often considered public because they are provisioned by large-scale institutions rather than being considered public because we have agreed that we are collectively in a shared need with respect to them." Andy Tudhope, on his side, suggests to rethink the ownership economy in terms of signature economies. And I quote, "The ownership economy doesn't fully describe the kind of world we want to create together. Noticing this is not just a question about what kind of web we want, it's about how we see ourselves and how willing we are to keep sharing our singular histories with all the others. Do we trust ourselves enough to signal the kinds of economies we wish to engage in, and do we have the courage to sign the sorts of transactions which will bring that about? In Bitcoin, I can sign over an unspent transaction to another address. In Ethereum and other account-based models, I can sign a message which changes a value stored in a shared state. In each case, I'm not the sole possessor or controller. I'm a signatory on an event shared with everyone who participates in the network. So ownership in digital economies is really about meaningful signatures, focusing on how we make meaning rather than who possesses which particular bit. And this can help us understand why shared state changes signed by many individuals are valuable. A signature is both irreducibly unique and that which binds you contractually to a world beyond yourself. It's both singular and iterable. By this mark, I mean my meaning. I memorialize my being a witness to this moment. But I do not do this in isolation. My meaning must be read by others in order for it to hold real value. So is ownership shifting from an ability to demonstrate control or possession to the ability to make collective meaning? If so, the change in signification is a radical one, because ownership is traditionally about exclusive rights, whereas meaning is made valuable by how widely it's shared, end quote. And that was a long quote. Because if NFTs are commonly used to pair assets with data, we shouldn't forget that they are as much about owning your own assets than owning your own data. There are actually already many use cases of NFTs for the commons, such as in decentralized identity systems, in decentralized science, and so on, far, far from the AR nightmare dreamed by Balaji, in which NFTs allow one to literally see doors to buildings that people who don't own the corresponding NFT would not see. Use cases that lead us to the idea that public goods funding by individuals allow for a possibility to replace state structures that are failing at it. So I let myself a bit loose on the conflation of public goods and commons so far, since the two terms are quite often used interchangeably. But let's come back to the commons, and in particular to the idea of land ownership. We still haven't recovered from the classical political economy schemes to separate the rural peasantry from their access to land. And on one side of the crypto finance spectrum, initiatives flourish to change this. So this side is called ReFi, for regenerative finance, in opposition to the full speculative one that we call DeFi, but that somehow stands less for decentralized finance than for degenerative finance. If projects abound in the carbon credit area, with the aim of solving the issues of malicious middlemen carbon broker, taking huge cuts by registering carbon credits on chain, and by tokenizing voluntary carbon markets, there is even more urgent in the carbon credit sphere: stopping population expulsions due to carbon offsetting. So I owe this slide to Agustin Materi, who pointed to this article in his DEF CON talk last month. Thus, I'll leave aside the carbon credits on chain sphere to mention a couple projects that stand out in their use of NFTs for the commons, and that stand in three particular ways. So first, the good. One of the most fascinating and advanced that I came across is the Geo NFT by Collectivo. The Collectivo framework is a collection of institutional technologies that allow local communities to launch, finance, and govern their own regenerative economies. Collectivo started as a DAO, Cura DAO, created in August 2019 in Curaçao, to enhance coordination and fundraising on the island, to support different social impact projects, including a beach cleanup and the delivery of computer equipment to undeserved schools in the town of Barber. Today, Collectivo is a global coalition of innovators, impact funders, and environmental stewards working to launch the first community economy on Curaçao. This community economy focuses on the sustainable food forest token, a new type of ecological asset based on regenerative agroforestry to back the community currency. The aim is, of course, to prototype this framework on the island before expanding it to communities globally. Each community will produce their own ecological assets to both back themselves and support the Collectivo network as a whole. So following the Geo NFT are ecological tokens, fungible ERC20 tokens split from the Geo NFT through a process known as fractionalization. These tokens can act as collateral in local reserves, such as the Collectivo Curaçao Reserve for Community Currency Production, and as treasury assets, materially backing the wealth of the network and the new community economies around the world. Another exciting use of geospatial NFTs is made by Gainforest. Using multimodal environmental data from field-based, satellite-based, and drone-based, and genomic monitoring, their AI algorithms can examine tree cover or tree loss in an area. So later, the smart contract channels the donations to projects that positively impact nature and issue an NFT with their proof of care concept. So these NFTs will dynamically show the latest data collected from the site and enable the continuous funding model to reward investors who commit to long-term payments in the conservation projects. So I'm going to rush a little bit over here. The bad. The line is fine between sustainable projects and the white saviorism of land preservation DAOs and NFTs. For now, most of these conservation projects by way of Web3 tech are led by Web3 tech people who are in majority white wealthy men, usually pretty disconnected from the local situations they aim at solving. So this point I'm making is backed both by public discussions and by my personal experience in the field. Some projects appear as pure and simple land appropriation or furthering the private property of land plots under the guise of green NFTs. So I'm quickly sharing some screenshots from the website of one such green NFT project that takes us from the commons realm, since the conservation area is to be enjoyed only by its NFT holders for very cute purposes such as, and I quote, spiritual camps, yoga, tai chi, and meditation. And we'll go quickly over the ugly. So conservation violence is not an utopic and has not waited for NFTs to produce recolonization of indigenous land, such as I mentioned earlier with regard to carbon offsetting, and population expulsions. In the southern region of Amazonas state, the ancestral territory of the Apurinha people is one of the most preserved areas in the Amazon rainforest, thanks to the presence of indigenous people. But there, a company, Nemus, owns 410 square kilometers of rainforest and hopes to use some of the cash generated from the sales of NFTs to buy additional land, as well as fund forest restoration projects like tree preservation. The NFTs Nemus sell won't guarantee specific ownership of particular tracts of land, but will give buyers that Nemus calls guardians the ability to access information about the preservation of the land, as well as making decisions about its conservation. So after listening to the Apurinha people, and that's a first, the federal public ministry in the Amazonas sued the company Nemus and demanding that it prove the ownership over the land, and the organization of some public consultation stated that the company didn't have the authorization, of course, to exploit economically this indigenous land. And it goes even further. As stated in this article that I really recommend you to read, Flavio de Mera Pena, so Nemus founder and acclaimed environmental entrepreneur, said that indigenous people are, and I quote him, kind of invaders in our land. So I think I will leave you on this frightening note to make my point. Let's keep our eyes peeled for the good, the bad, and the ugly that happens in the space. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tzu-Tung. I'm a political artist from Taiwan. After 2014 Sunflower Revolution, there's a boost in Taiwan civic participation. At the time, I participated in 2 political parties in Taiwan and meet many members in the municipal council. At the same time, I also participated in many indigenous movements. Oh, I'm sorry. The PowerPoint seems like it's the old one, but okay, it's okay. But I would just like continue, and some of the slides I would just like continuing through talking. So there's okay. So on 2016, I visited Garadibur, and at the time, there's about like 220 hectares of their traditional territory being appropriated by the Taidong local government. They are being assigned to another solar panel company that they are going to like build solar panel on their traditional territory. At the same time, that it's also a case that happened in Turuku indigenous community. There's a company called Asian Cement company, which is like appropriate their mountain and then bump their mountain into a flat hole. And why it happened in this way, it's actually, there's like also a kind of like a triangle structure between all these different agencies, between the government and the local community and the company. They are both like all thinking they're doing goods for the others, but actually they have like strong conflict in their interest. And the base layer of it is this kind of like colonial structure. In Taiwan, it was like being colonized by first Japanese empire. And at the time when in 1907, Yasui Katsuji, he was originally a colonial officer in Taiwan. He had done a research stating that indigenous people doesn't have personhood because they don't have rights, protection, privilege, or responsibility under Japan national law, so they are not legal human. And by saying that, it kind of making all the contract that made with the indigenous people void. For example, in this contract at the right-hand side, it's a contract that's signed in 1803 between indigenous people and Han community. And it's like they agree the contract by like a hand printing, but it's also like being seen as a void contract. Through this way, this government appropriate a lot of indigenous land. And what kind of alternative regime exists there? Sometimes blockchain gives us kind of like hope of that it is a place that it's without the government sovereign, the government regime, and probably there's a place for us to build a decentralized economic circle. In 2020, me and Hong Kong artist Winnie Sun initiate this project called For Economy. And our first project was in exhibit in Lab Kill Lab, which is an exhibition created by Shu Lea Cheang and Yukiko Shikata. In this For Economy project, we initiate a contract workshop inviting biologists, marine conservators, policymakers, indigenous activists together to draft contracts on how to own 1 millimeter of South China Sea. Through about like 5 hours of discussion, we decide that the South China Sea ownership, we kind of like draft a contract that the South China Sea ownership should become like cooperative, and 1 millimeter of the South China Sea should equal to or be priced at 0.024 Teso. Like Teso, it's one of the cryptocurrency there. And in our second version, we even like updated it. So we put all this contract onto NFT, and for people to buy all this NFT. So people who buy this NFT equals to buy this C contract. We issued 10,000 edition of all this contract, and will regenerate from all this royalty. We will regenerate another 10,000 edition of the contract. The purpose of it is we want to generate as much sea owners as much as possible. And in the latest one, we have in South Korea, we have we have, sorry, because like that slide it's not yet here, but I can. When we were exhibit in South Korea, we also formed a workshop, and the purpose of the workshop is asking like, is international alliance important for when seeing the common? For example, since South China Sea, it's a sea area that it's actually a bit far from South Korea. Should South Korea like have any kind of international alliance or discussion over this sea area, like through which perspective, seeing it as a natural commons or seeing it like from political perspective? And then so for many indigenous community, actually creating okay, so for many indigenous community, creating it's not a not a process that it's like a very like artist own the artwork itself. A lot of indigenous artists actually have a different relationship with their artworks. For example, when I visit Garadibu, I've met Yiming. And Yiming is the person who carved the ancestor pillar in Balaguan. Balaguan is Garadibu's men's gathering place. Men gathering there in order to become a man. And at there, he was like, when I met him, he was like introducing why he carved the pillar to a lot of teenagers. And he said that the reason why he carved the pillar is like when he carved the pillar, he have the pillar, like did the pillar as the same way as the ancestors did. His hand moved the same way as his ancestors' movement, and how he feels is exactly the same as how the ancestors feel. Through this way, indigenous creator is having a different kind of relationship with the ancestors. They are also are connecting and exchanging between the past and the living. In another case is James Luna's case. James Luna, he was at the time he had a performance. He was like wearing his traditional outfit and walking outside of the Indigenous Museum in Washington, D.C. And there's a lot of tourists coming next to him and trying to take a picture with him. He framed his framework as take a picture with real Indian. I think like in this way, museum is actually provides a kind of like spectatorship, and this kind of object spectatorship make artwork collectible and make artwork as a property. And the image is taking the image as an action of like taking the object as a privatized object. In 2018, I initiated Artthon. It's a series of artist hackathon. And at the time, I would try to introduce blockchain and NFT to artist community and different indigenous community. However, it is a bit hard because most of the community in Taiwan doesn't speak English, and even more, there is like a lot of places don't even have computer. So it kind of like proved this kind of a model that it's actually new technology. It's very hard to cross the chasm to approach its early majority. And recently, I actually have a project called Positive Coin, recently going to show in China, and it's really being censored. Positive Coin, it's a cryptocurrency with designed with the feature of HIV virus, and we deliver a lot of questionnaire to people asking, for example, what's their idea about HIV, and their idea is like reflecting and calculated as a stigma scale and reflected as the price of the Positive Coin. And that questionnaire is like very being censored. A lot of things is being easily being erased if we are using like inside Chinese system. So we decided like to transfer all the data onto the NFT and enable to make people to circulate this information. As an artist from Taiwan, I think like blockchain and NFT, it's a very critical tools. It kind of gives hope for us to have a decentralized future, but more important is that it keeps the data intact and also gives us more opportunity for democratization when facing totalitarian regime. Thank you.
I assume yes. Yeah, I have some feedback. Okay. Hi everyone, thanks for inviting me here. I've been following, it was very interesting so far, and I'd like to link to some of the things that were stated. Meanwhile, I'll ask you to cycle through slides. There are perhaps too many, so what I want to say lies mostly in the last slides. But I want to introduce you what we do first at Dynorc. You had the luck to meet Puria, one of the developers that lead now Zerum, and that has done a workshop on our core product in the space of crypto, Zerum. Next slide, please. So yeah, that's what we do at Dyn. We are a foundation based in the Netherlands for institutional and administrative purposes, but mostly we are pretty much everywhere. We operate in Europe, and we are very close to the way Aksioma and other institutions, magazines like Makery, and we are lucky to be involved with them. We are very close to the way we approach technology with curiosity and with definite passion for hacking through it, and allowing people to hack through it. A very important point, I think, that speaks to our topic today. Next slide, please. So this is my research that is, of course, shared by many, I guess, in the audience, participating to this panel, as well listeners. Today has become a very important topic to study algorithms, how they govern us. I think ultimately this is less of a technical issue and more of a governance issue. But unfortunately, the technocracy that is governing us poses the techno language as a barrier to step into the governance that the algorithms should democratize in a way to their participants. So quickly said, I think that the image that I propose you, the artwork, speaks well about the power of algorithms. They can convince us to do things we are not really interested in, like crossing a railway, looking for a Pokemon on our screens. And the creation of incentives, the manipulation of desires, is a power that is very dangerous and can be used even in a war situation. Please, next slide. We worked on various projects in Europe. This is a flagship one that concentrated on data sovereignty, control, private data. How do we share the data for the public good? Next slide. The underpinning of this project was an attempt. I can say an attempt now because the mainstream narrative on the smart city has gone owl and completely out of control for the cities themselves. But this was an attempt at reclaiming the smart city and trying to develop at least a narrative, but also technological tools to develop trust among citizens when we talk about technology. Again, I believe that unfortunately the rhetoric of smart city has gone completely different direction. Last time I was in a smart city expo, it was quite a ridiculous show up of technology made to understand people and to manipulate them mostly and monitor them. Next slide, please. So yeah, we are activists in a way, and we participated. We couldn't skip the worldwide sensation that was crypto. So myself was involved in the early development of Bitcoin Core, and many of us have studied, manipulated code, and created new code. Nowadays, some of our friends at DarkFi are also involved in creating DeFi platforms and so on and so forth. We did not made an ICO ever. We did not created an NFT ever at Dyn. We just are interested pretty much into the social impact of technology. And in this case, next slide, please. I like to highlight, as I often do, the fact that most of the technologies, open source ethos, and narratives that we are traveling into this space come from conjunction between here you can see personalities, but wider movements that believe in the fact that transparency, even against established powers, is a very important stance to take. So here we see two of the people that are most mistreated perhaps in the news today, Richard Stallman and Julian Assange, holding a picture of another whistleblower that escaped the martyrdom they went through. Next slide, please. So, yeah, within this context, what do we do as hackers? What do we do as people that are not really interested in being martyrs, as I don't wish for anyone here, but changing little by little society with constructive approaches, perhaps hybrid approaches, and things, tools, narratives that people can appropriate, make their own. Zerum is one of the main attempts. I started coding this software about 5 years ago, so it's a relatively new software for our experience. Puria joined me and many other developers. The main goal that we have with this, besides providing very advanced cryptographic functions and zero-knowledge proof transformations, is to make it easy to use and understand. And it's an operational language. And I think it's inspiring for many of you that may think of next projects to do. This operation tries to make accessible smart language in a way that people can understand it, because smart languages are governing, in fact, most of the agreements taken in the crypto space, most of the projects, and not understanding them is basically being out of the game. This is something that holds true for most cases, and was probably predicted as well. Already in the 80s, I can recall Saskia Sassen writing about the fact that we lack a grammatic for understanding the power that technology is taking into our societies. And we start from a sort of grammatic that is closer to humans than to machines. So next slide, please. This is my proposal at the end for the design of future systems. Lies into this question that I pose to most people that are developing today. I pose it to myself every time I have an idea. I have a lot of bad ideas, I can tell you. And I try to measure them around this question, whether we are developing for the machines to understand humans or for us humans to understand machines. It's simplistic, but I try to really make it blunt and direct in this way. I believe that the financialization of societies and life is ultimately a manifestation of the development of machines to understand humans. So the whole financial system is a system that is namely out of control since the flash crash onwards, and nowadays I think it's more out of control than ever, than Hitler could ever imagine. And the development of machines to understand humans led to a machinic representation of value, exchange value, namely, rather than use value, and into an abstraction that is, to quote Christian Marazzi, the contrary of what he calls an anthropogenesis. So what I suggest we do in terms of development, in the future also of crypto, and I like with this to answer to Shu Lea, I think we have to bring the crypto to the commons rather than the commons to the crypto, because the commons have much more to offer, at least the commons culture. But bring it to the commons in terms of making it look at the interdisciplinarity and its value when studying systems that goes beyond the math of a crypto and goes into the experience of how humans deal with technology. And here I conclude. I like to say I very much like, again, what I saw as presentations before me, so thanks for these contributions. I was particularly stricken by the last one, showing a contract signed by a native of a land that was expropriated, and this contract was signed with an end. I think that is a clear manifestation of how important is democratizing language, and this is nothing new. I'm not inventing anything here. Alphabetization was very important. The question is also how we develop this language, and who this language is for, because languages can be developed in very different ways. And in computer languages, we have synthetic languages, basically. Well, what it is for, and in its words and grammatic lies already a trace of the power and the way it shapes. So I don't think we are dealing again with neutral technology, but a technology that is shaped by also the smart contract language, in case of crypto, that is deployed on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the 3 presentations. Excellent. I'm going to actually ask each panelist a quick question before we open the floor for questions. In all the presentation, and I understand you have been doing a lot of research about, particularly for me, I would consider almost the kind of off-grid DAOs community, DAOs, the practice of DAOs. Particularly, you mentioned quite a few examples from Global South, from Amazon, this way. I'm curious about particularly your strong belief about the DAO and DAO, the interrelationship from DAO to DAO. And do you feel by now you have more of a concrete idea of how that DAO, how to connect these knots? The microphone.
Well, it's a field that is really under very young development, so it would only be speculation. But I think the main issue right now is the relationships between non-crypto institutions and crypto neo-institutions. So this is the way things have to be developed, and let's say it's DAO. I mean, it's a pretty old. I mean, I wrote it like 2 years ago before it was published, the article. But so now things have also changed, and I think a lot of interesting developments are made actually within DAOs, with systems of producing sub-DAOs, and like having some of like more. I mean, it's mostly on the level of the work organization inside the DAO, and like the organization of the contributors. And it's, I mean, it's a huge field, and I can't really expand on it here. But this quote you used was in the framework of a reflection on the conditions of work and contribution within DAOs. And these frameworks don't really exist or are just being prototyped right now. And it's more how we maybe deal with the usually practical hierarchies that are set within DAOs without saying the word. And that's why I was really trying to dig into that.
Okay, great. Yeah. I think, I think maybe to say it's a prototype, I think it's really to experiment, isn't it? However, of course, we also have the long demilitarized. There's all these different, through the era, like different idea of how to build autonomous organizations. So it's interesting now that this particular decentralized concept become another platform, and I do believe it's still in a kind of development stage. Yeah. With Lee Tzu-Tung, I also want to particularly ask a question. because as a political artist, and you actually really, I think you're someone who really can jump into using, you've been working with the coins and the NFT platform. So I think a lot of artists have certain kind of resistance, isn't it, to use this platform, for political reason or economical reason, ecological reason. However, artists have long been in the forefront of using technology. I mean, whenever there is a new technology, what we call the new toy appears, I think a lot of artists actually could apply that technology for personal work and actually try to, subverting the technology, isn't it? In the sense of subverting the technology or turning the technology around. I want to ask Tzu-Tung one particular question is that, do you feel there is alliance of the artists to be found, or how do you find it, these alliance of artists that you can feel you can connect to?
You mean the artists who are also
working in this particular practice? Yes.
Artists who are also doing political art, or artists who are also doing play with coins or cryptocurrencies?
Well, both, I think. You could consider that I consider play with coin is political.
Play with coins. So actually, if seeing as my team, for example, if it's positive coin, I actually find more engineer who's already work in blockchain companies. They're doing lots of blockchain company are interested in our auction, and there's a lot of engineers that actually are interested in art. So we find them as collaborator to make this project happen. And for economy project, I collaborate with Winnie soon, and this is through the introduction of you at the time when we were doing Lab Kill Lab. So yeah, Winnie is also from Hong Kong, and she's very aware of the political situation both in Hong Kong and in Taiwan. So I think it's a great match that we were being able to have this economy project, thinking about how to think about sovereignty issues beyond the current setting.
Okay, great. So then I have a question for Jaromil. You still there?
Yes, sure, yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I first met Jaromil. I remember it was in early 2000s. I think we met in Liverpool at FACT, actually, at the time. I remember that was actually you were coming in as KOP, Kingdom of Piracy artist. Actually, we have a show that opened up the media launch at FACT in 2003. So
was it Taxi to Praxi? Armin was there. Armin invited me.
Yes, and I think you bring in the dime in the CD-ROM, I believe. Did you? I just remember that you kind of was so excited about your dime, and you say, plug it in, just plug it in, you will see a different world, it would open you up, you will, see a different world. And then to see that you advance into writing this large volume of your PhD thesis, the algorithm sovereignty. So it's I kind of see you always developing new strategy, new network structure, or anti-network structure, or alternative network structure. In your talk today, I was struck by your tirelessness to bring up these three keywords. Again, it's very important three keywords: the control, power, and trust. So I just want to ask you, how do you reinvent yourself all the time? How do you so tirelessly keep coming out with different structure that that you truly believe and you truly want to carry out, and you are trying to convince the whole world to believe in you and to follow suit? How you do that?
Thanks, Shu Lea. This is a great compliment. I need to deflect it immediately. I mean, one of the known secrets is that I'm not alone. So our practice is the hacker practice. We are pretty much everywhere. Not everyone likes to be seen. A lot of people have been acting in very different ways, and most, if not actually all my work that is relevant owes to the contribution of other people. It is a mishmash of open source interactions, inspirations, relationships. And so I owe to, for instance, Armin a lot of hints on my path and what to take and what to look at, and even explaining how I act, and not just me. Right now, Dyn is a collective that counts up to 20 people that are constantly active and interacting on new ideas, on old ideas, and we are brainstorming actively. Mostly our topic now is a circular economy. I think you can see the progression of this organization, which is pretty much the place where I put all my work with continuity out of institutions I've worked in as a narrative, as a collective narrative. You can see it as the progression of all our scene in terms of digital art, net art, and open source, in understanding really what is happening around us. So I think being a collective, being in touch with a collective, and somehow not being just an artist celebrating himself or herself is the best recipe.
Yeah, so with this, I really want to thank Aksioma again for bringing us together for this hybrid conference. And indeed, I think because of their very tireless networking to bring this event together, we actually realized that we are never alone. And I myself am very indebted to a community of artists, hackers, networkers, and usually, knowing that there is a possibility to still make alliance, to still network, to think of maybe have an idea from just a glimpse of an idea, a concept to develop and realize into a real project. This particular from Commons to NFT conference that's happening now for me is particularly meaningful. I think it really triggered really almost, it's not easy to consider. It's not to consider when Felix and Erwin and I first started this, just say, oh, we're just going to publish 7 texts, to develop into a conference, a hybrid conference that we can trigger some thoughts or new thoughts, and on a very timely topics from Commons to NFTs. So with this, I would like to open up the floor for questions. Anyone?
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Felix Fritsch. I'm organizer of the Crypto Commons gathering that was mentioned earlier. I have some things first on the question of DAO to DAO collaboration. I think what's like two aspects that might be interesting to look into. On the one hand, labor DAO, that is organizing workers in DAOs to face hierarchies and labor conditions in DAOs. And then on the other hand, I want to point to stuff like mutual stakeholding between DAOs that aligns interests and shares up and downsides of projects and makes them thus in a collective more resilient. So that could be each DAO chips in 10% of their tokens into DRIP, for example, that then is issued equally to all the participants. But there are many ways to do this, and I don't know if you would consider that DAO to DAO collaboration already, or these are beginnings, right? And more towards a question, I would ask Jaromil whether he could go a bit more in depth on the bringing crypto to commons and not the other way around, because we're trying to work towards that, but could you be a bit more explicit or give examples of what you mean there? Thank you.
Shall I directly answer, Felix?
Yeah, please, please.
Nice to see you there. By the way, I was one of the happy participants of the Crypto Commons, the first gathering that Felix organized with others. And yeah, just pointing out that one of the many things that work collectively and inspire me and others. I take up the provocation from the talk of Shu Lea, and I say that we are to bring the crypto to the commons, because I believe that if we are up to imagine them as two bottles, the commons is full of something that the crypto lacks, definitely, and his experience with collectivizing experience, participation, inclusion, and understanding diversity. An example is it's directly in my experience as an observer and promoter of the Assange DAO, which was so far the biggest DAO in favor of the Assange family. The big embarrassment that we all had in the DAO is the fact that so many participants were there and there weren't the tools evolved enough to involve them properly. The Assange DAO had I mean, it was more than in the tens of thousands of participants, probably real people, most likely, on the other side and all across the world. The languages spoken were many, prominently English and Chinese were the most used, and it was a real problem in using a platform like Discord to inform the investors on decisions beyond that of funding the Assange family. This is something that could be overcome just by experience of commoners and how the methodology of assemblies and communication is handled, and probably applying the corporate practice of investor communication is not enough, because we are anyway entering a field that is not plain investment of funds and interest in yields, but is true passion to the participation to something revolutionary. So this, to give something on the crypto part, I believe most people in crypto that have stepped in crypto are passionate about changing something in the world they live. They may range from anti-state feelings to revolutionary ideals or autonomist ideas. In any case, they are very passionate. And this is also shown by the fact that WikiLeaks was probably the first project that made crypto fly, accepting Bitcoin donations after the financial blockade back in 2004. 2011. So I think that there is more to conclude. There is more than the commons crowd can give to the crypto, but it's not a given that the crypto people will understand what they need. Most of people in crypto nowadays have a tunnel vision into tech, and only through tech they can be spoken to. Those of us who have the privilege of having studied theoretical mathematics, how zero-knowledge proof works in the past 10 years, can maybe have a channel. And I see also brains shutting off quickly when economics is mentioned beyond the typical framework in which we are locked in, at least in the Western world, given by the Chicago School or the Austrian School of Economics.
Okay, another question? Anyone? I actually do not see any question from our online audience, so I don't know if we have someone else want to ask a question. If not, but maybe Aude, maybe you want to also particularly re-stress these DAO
I have a question.
Yeah. Is there one?
My question is of a pretty... Is it okay?
Yeah.
My question is of a pretty general nature, and it's regarding the East Asian crypto community in general, because we know that technically in People's Republic of China, cryptocurrencies are banned, and well, the main ports are Singapore, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, right? So my question is, how far is the East Asian crypto community in terms of, like, when you interact with people on the internet? As you said, the most common language is either English or Chinese. Now, just if you could give like a general assessment of what is happening in the crypto community now, how is the adoption rate going, and if you see that, what policies are being taken, what is the viewpoint of maybe people who would be early adopters in terms of banning People's Republic of China, and how that is reflected to all the surrounding circle, basically. Thank you.
Wow, I think, Tzu-Tung, you had to be the one answer this question then.
Yeah, but I want to confirm with this question. So it's like, you kind of like want to ask about the general crypto situation in East Asia? Or like, what exactly?
Yes, just maybe like from just your personal standpoint, how do you see the development and like, especially in terms of like ban on cryptocurrency in East Asian community or?
Right. So, so this time when I work with China, I feel actually before, because the project I issued is called Positive Coins, like related to AIDS community in China. And it happens around October, so it's at the time when China doing the Congress election. It's particularly censored. So originally we were designing the whole economic system, like we are connecting with different AIDS NGO. We are like having like different NGO can have this coin, but we are going out and like talk and seeking the possibility of collaboration. They all say no because it's like too sensitive at the time, and they are like trying to like do nothing. And when we're like designing the project, also like when delivering the questionnaire, if like there's any terms relating to nation, it's being deleted. Another thing is there's like always the change of rules. For example, at the beginning, my curator said that there may be like some ways to bypass. They can like not be censored, but actually till recent we are like very sure we cannot issue cryptocurrency, but we can issue NFT. So that's kind of like actually change every day, and it's really hard to like set exactly how would be the next step of China's policy. But that provides me as a Taiwan artist a way of like kind of transporting the data or like investigating like what's happened within.
So we have time for another question. Yes. The microphone? Yes.
Thanks. Question is for Aude. It seems we share an obsession with these sort of green crypto, saving the world, saving the Amazon kind of projects. So that was nice to see. And I'm particularly interested in the good that the ones that you listed under the good, because mostly I see ones that I get frustrated about. And I'm wondering, like, if you could define a bit more why you thought these were sort of under the good, and because one of the things that I often see is like, even if the ideas are good and sort of the logic that they use makes sense. There is more story than actual like impact. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I started to mention collective also because I followed their work since the beginning, since the creation of Kura DAO, and it's a local DAO that stemmed from a community and from people that were from the island, and that's, I mean, they were on both continents, but still they were very closely related to the island, and so that was the first, of course, good side to the project, but it also started as a DAO and not as a startup, which is also a very different framework. And I think, I mean, I also got very interested because I was looking for groundbreaking uses of NFTs, because most NFTs in the field are just used to raise funds. And I would say just because, yeah, most of the times there is not that much transparency over the use of these funds so far. So the way they use NFTs to embed information inside it and not being just like a dumb JPEG of like some tree or whatever, it's just you access the data from your wallet, and you can like show it to people. You can like check it in real time, and the NFTs change in real time. So you can just, it's just a way actually to embed the information in the form of something that is concise and actually even like pleasant to look at, but also like very practical. And that's why I mentioned these two projects on the good side also, because they're really making this groundbreaking work and developing the field in a new way. So,
great. Actually, I just want to finally someone respond on the online community from Rafael Franco, who mentioned here in South America, native peoples have a philosophy of good living, which preaches harmony between humans and nature within their territory. I think this is a great remark to end this section of our first panel. Yeah, I think we are exactly on time to finish this. And we will have, where's the break sign? We will have 30 minutes break and come back for the second panel at 5 o'clock. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you.
Cheers, thanks.
Thank you.